To gloss real quickly over the lesson mechanic, I'm going to bring up the best one of this bunch at the top here just while I talk about it. So if you're not familiar with lesson, it's a new card type, well, subtype in this set. Basically, this is a subtype you can tutor. You'll see that a lot of the cards in this set have the keyword learn, and learn basically means you can select a lesson you own from outside the game and put it into your hand. And for tournament play, that means your sideboard, basically. So there are a lot of cards in this set that you'll see that learn is basically draw a card from your sideboard as long as it is a lesson spell. I think that's a very powerful mechanic in general, because anything that replaces itself can only ever be so bad. That being said, sideboard slots are valuable. I think a lot of the powerful lessons that are going to see constructed play are the ones that are very versatile and that will offer you solutions to a variety of problems. There are a few learn cards that are good enough to see constructed play, in my opinion, and that banks off the fact that you dedicate 5 to 6 sideboard slots to lessons to offer you a variety of answers. If you're willing to do that, and losing the sideboard space doesn't bother you that much, then we're probably talking. I think we got some good ones. We'll take a look at Mascot Exhibition while we've got it up. This is the Mythic lesson. I think this is the only Mythic lesson to my knowledge. Switch that around. Move this over here again now. It is a 7-mana colourless spell that creates a 2/1, a 3/2, and a 4/4. Now, that isn't very good by itself, to be totally honest. It's obviously a limited all-star, but it's kind of a bit chunk. No, like, why would you spend 7 mana on this willingly when you could spend 1 more mana casting an Ugin, right? And I suppose the question is, the only reason this card sees play as a lesson is if there are no better threats. So again, I think the way for me to analyze learn as a mechanic is you need to be able to gain options. So you want your cards that learn to be able to offer you removal, you want them to be able to offer you card advantage, you want them to be able to offer you counter magic, and you also want to be able to have a threat. So that if you're ahead on board, you can continue to snowball that pressure through the learn mechanic. And if Mascot Exhibition is going to see play, it's because it is the quote-unquote best threat that you can find off of learn. Outside of that, I think it's a mythic for limited reasons and nothing else, and it's probably not going to see much play. If there is a lesson that is better than this as a threat, it's probably going to fall by the wayside. I think most of these colourless lessons have definitely been designed for limited. They're a little bit small, so I'm gonna read them real quick to make sure I'm not missing anything silly. I'm not. I think I'll look at Introduction to Annihilation, perhaps. But it's pretty clear to me that most of these colourless lessons have been designed for limited. They're in the set so that you can draft any colour of learn deck and you will have a universal lesson to be able to go and get, and that's fine. That being said, Introduction to Annihilation might be okay above the bar as a colourless lesson, just because it fits that role we're talking about before. It is just an answer to whatever the problem is. It's just exile target non-land permanent. It's expensive, but you do get to draw the card for free for the most part off of whatever card is finding this. So I think if what you're looking for again is just, I need a lesson that can answer whatever the problem is, maybe this is your cup of tea depending on what colour combination you find yourself in. I think the other colourless ones up here are definitely just limited fodder. Scrying 2, drawing a card, putting counters on stuff, searching for lands. Not really constructed playable effects, I don't think. Let's take a look at Wandering Archaic. Is it Wandering Archaic? I fucking suck at pronouncing names. This is a 2-sided card, so we're going to have to take a look at both sides of this in a second. Let me open up the other one so I can just hop between them. Front side of this, Archaic. Okay, Wandering Archaic. There we go. 5 mana 4/4. We're not off lessons entirely, no. The colourless ones outside of Annihilation are a bit... whatever, honestly. Annihilation is like, okay, but the others are pretty clearly limited fodder, I think. 5 mana 4/4 here. Avatar creature. Whenever an opponent casts an instant or... yeah, we're going by colour, don't worry, don't panic. Instant or sorcery they can pay to. If they don't, you may copy it. Is there any instants or sorceries that are going to be standard legal that this is right? I guess this is good against Ultimatum. Like, specifically, Sultai Ultimatum isn't very happy to see this. Fuck me, this playlist sucks. Give me a sec. Let's just go with... I like to try and rotate through these playlists, but some of them are god-awful. Yeah, so the thing is, right, that Drannith Magistrate is white, right? And Drannith Magistrate has already been kind of like okay in the Ultimatum matchups. And this is just like colorless, universal, probably equally easy to remove, but the backside might affect how willing you are to play that. It's good against Ultimatums. Is there really any other spells that are like superly impactful to be delaying? Because that's basically what you're doing here, right? Your opponent's basically never going to let you copy anything that matters. They're just going to wait to cast it. But outside of the Ultimatums, I don't think there's a lot of things I'm worried about delaying that are particularly impactful. The other side of this card, however, is Explore the Vast Lands. It's a 3 mana sorcery. Each player looks at the top 5 cards of their library, reveals a land and or an instant or sorcery, and puts them into their hand. Each player gains 3 life. Normally I'm really off of effects that affect both players like this, because you're the one spending the mana and the card on it, right? But this card is definitely built in a way that you can break the symmetry, where a lot of the power kind of lies in effects like this. You would need to be consistently hitting both a land and an instant or sorcery, and expecting your opponent to basically never hit an instant or sorcery for this to be good. Either that, or you have like an instant or sorcery that you really want to find. And like Zenith Flare was chucked around in the chat, but there are better ways of finding that in cycling. It's hard to break the symmetry on an effect like this, but it's not impossible that you have a list where finding a certain card is so important or so impactful that you're kind of willing to chuck your opponent an extra card. All in all, this card being combined together is kind of interesting. I don't hate the fact that we have this like pseudo hate bear effect, that if the hate bear is bad, I can just draw cards with it. That's not the worst, and obviously it being colorless means that it's universally playable in just about any shell, regardless of color identity. This is a unique card, and I think it's very hard to evaluate in general. I think both sides are kind of weak by themselves, but you're paying a price for that versatility again, to have options available to you in your deck. This definitely isn't unplayable, but I would be surprised if it saw too much play. There's definitely a home for it in some alternative universe. Okay, Academic Probation. Another rare lesson we have here. We have 2 mana, choose 1. Sorcery speed, important to note. Choose a non-land card. Opponent cannot cast spells of that name until the next turn. Or choose non-land permanent. It can't attack or block, and its abilities can't be activated until the next turn. This is the kind of lesson that I was talking about, to be honest. Academic Probation here is rare for a reason. And it's because it's the kind of lesson that solves a problem. And I know I keep saying this, but if lesson and learn are going to be good in constructed, it's because the cards you're playing give you access to all the options you could possibly need. You need a good removal spell. You need a good... Hey, Funky Flump, thank you very much for the host. I appreciate that. Thank you for sending your folks over. It means the world. How are you today? You need a lesson that answers, creatures. A lesson that answers planeswalkers. One that finds your card advantage a threat. You want flexible effects that turn your learn cards into answers to everything. And that's what Academic Probation allows you to do. This is the kind of card you're going to want in that package, because it's a one-turn Meddling Mage or a one-turn Pacifism, whatever it is you need to buy time against. So, yeah, really wouldn't surprise me if this one saw play in the sideboard of decks that are happy to play learn cards, basically. Aegis Guardian, this is just some limited filler. Some more limited filler. This one, however, is not limited filler. You think it's the best lesson? That's an interesting shout. Now, Clever Lumimancer. This one's got some gasoline behind it. 1-drop, Magecraft. Whenever you cast or copy an instant or sorcery, this gets +2/+2 until the end of the turn. I'm not surprised you like this one, Hugh. This is a knockoff of Monastery Swiftspear. It's not got haste, obviously, but it does get bigger faster with this like pseudo prowess effect. This card's good. It's aggressive. It's fast. The only thing you really want to be worried about with something like Clever Lumimancer is how consistently you can cast instant or sorceries to keep buffing this thing to hit like a truck. I think there's definitely a home for this, no doubt. It's too efficient. It's a very strong early game effect. You just have to build around it. Wizard subtype also helps in Pioneer. That's very true. I think the Wizard subtype is definitely a very relevant thing on a card like this, especially for Eternal formats. Yeah, love this. Love this card. I think it's a fantastic design. Reminds me of Seeker of the Way in some ways. You're going to die to this thing more than you think you are. It comes out of the gates hard and fast. I think it's a very powerful design. I like it a lot. Like it a lot. We've got some more limited filler in Infinite Combo and Legacy. By all means, enlighten me. Chain of Smog. Yeah, there's a few cards with Magecraft that benefit from Chain of Smog. So we got a couple more things down here for limited fodder. Defend the Campus, Combat Professor. Not really things that we're going to worry ourselves with ever too much. We'll take a second to look at Detention Vortex. It's about time they kind of printed this card with this limitation. The reason I'm interested in this card is because it is enchant non-land permanent. If this was creature... Hey, you Bellstar! Thank you for the raid, my friend. Welcome on in, folks. Lovely to see you here today. How are you, my friend? Let's get you the shout-out that you deserve. Everyone coming in from Bellstar. Hi, my name is Scott. I'm HowlingMines here on Twitch. I'm normally playing an awful lot of Magic. Howdy, folks. Lovely to see you. Hopefully you're having a good time. I'm here 5 days a week playing anything from Standard to Historic and everything in between. But today we are doing a review of Strixhaven's School of Mages. We're breaking the set down, taking a look at what's in there. What might affect Historic, what might affect Standard, what might affect all kinds of stuff. So we're doing a set review today. Hopefully you can enjoy a fair bit of that and discuss some cards with us. But if that isn't your cup of tea, I completely understand. Thank you for stopping by nonetheless, and hopefully you enjoy the show. We are learning, you could say, perhaps. But yeah, we're on Detention Vortex this particular moment in time. I'm interested in this because it says non-land permanent. Hey all, got 5 and 3 in the SCG? Dude, well done. Sounds good. I'm also sick, so I feel your pain. Go get some rest, and I'll see you again very soon. Thank you again for the raid. I appreciate it. You take care of yourself, friend, okay? Wow, Hugh. Wow. But yeah, this is cool that there's this like safety valve programmed into Detention Vortex, which is pretty cool. That your opponent can get rid of it whenever they want to, but it costs some kind of mana investment. So this is definitely like a tempo tool more than it is like solid removal, but it's going to buy you a lot of time. If you cast Detention Vortex early, it's going to shut things down. I agree with you, Joe. 3 mana is quite a lot for Legacy, but I'm not sure this card is necessarily good enough for Legacy personally. But this is cool. You can definitely push through this effect. But it takes time to get through it. So I really wouldn't surprise me to see some sideboard play from a card like Detention Vortex. It just buys you a lot of time. It could be good for auras, for sure. This is probably better than Heliod's Intervention, right? I would imagine this is better than Intervention in Historic. So yeah, this one is a good inclusion. I think it's a good chance it sees a fair amount of play going forward, which is kind of cool. It's a very unique sideboardy tool. The creatures can still crew the plow. Oh god, how can we possibly win? Devastating Mastery. Now, I saw this card a little earlier on this week and got kind of excited, to be honest, because I am a big fan of Planar Cleansing. I think people never respect Planar Cleansing style effects enough, and this is a Planar Cleansing that can be cheaper if you need it to be. It is still the 6 mana traditional destroy all target, destroy all non-land permanents effect that you have to build your deck around to be good, right? Whenever we've seen cleansing be good in the past, it's been because you're not playing cast out, or you're not playing enchantments or artifacts or anything like that. But you can build a deck that really benefits from that kind of sweeper. This being able to be cast for 4 mana, as long as you don't mind buying your opponent some time back, is also a very unique ability and could be quite powerful if you don't care about the permanents. I do agree with chat that 4 pips is a lot, but the deck I have in mind that would possibly want this, if anyone remembers it, there was a mono-white snow-based control deck that was played quite early in the season after Kaldheim released, using like Search for Glory, Faceless Haven, and these kind of things as win conditions. And I think that deck obviously just doesn't care about how many white pips are in this card at all, and it might be kind of happy to play 1 or 2 of these alongside Doomscar, because it was already kind of happy to play the Ondu inversion in the mana base of that deck. So it really wouldn't surprise me if it was kind of happy to pick this up. It doesn't play a lot of permanents that you mind blowing up, mainly because you get to play, what's it called? The Relic, Skyclave Relic, and I believe that card is indestructible. So being able to play like an indestructible mana rock that doesn't get blown to smithereens by your sweeper, while also just being able to like blow up Trail of Crumbs, blow up, Witch's Ovens, all these problematic permanents that see play in many of Arena's formats. I don't think this is like a home run or anything. It's not going to define Standard. It's definitely not going to define Historic. But it's a powerful tool for mono-white control, or maybe even like just white-based control. Wouldn't surprise me to see some of this knocking around if there are decks full of permanents, like your Urian shells that your opponent would really like to keep around. So yeah, really cool inclusion. Like this one a lot. Might not see the largest amount of play, but could definitely be a nice tool to have. Imagine letting people pick up their Urian. Just don't cast it for 4 mana then. Come on. Come on. If your opponent's casting Urian for 5 mana, you should have 6 mana by now, right? Yeah, we are moving along. The next card of note. Big fan of this. Elite Spellbinder. PV DDR's World Championship reward card for winning that. First of all, look at that artwork. Look at it. You can just tell it's PV. You really can. It's stellar. I love it. I think it's gorgeous. But this card's great. Human Cleric, 3/1 flyer, very reminiscent of Vendilion Click, but very glad this one doesn't have flash. Elite Spellbinder enters the battlefield. Look at target opponent's hand. You may exile a non-land from it. For as long as that card remains exiled, the owner can still play it, but it costs 2 more to cast this way. The important parts of this card is that the opponent will never ever get that card back. Killing Elite Spellbinder achieves nothing. It does not matter if they kill it. They still have the card. It just costs them 2 more to cast. Now, why is that good? The reason that's good is because cards like Urian Sky Nomad and Ephemerate are legal in arena-based formats, and flickering this card alongside things like Thalia or other like Raydan, like other taxing effects, your opponent's entire hand is just going to end up in exile, and you won't be able to cast any of it. Like this card's good. It's really good. It's an efficient tool. It's got evasion. It attacks well in the air, and it just taxes your opponent in those important moments. The white aggro decks already benefit from something like Raydan, where the opponent's got their Wrath of God, they're ready to sweep your board away, and you Raydan and make it cost 2 more mana. Elite Spellbinder does the same thing. You get to Spellbinder on turn 3, look at their hand, take the Wrath, and now it costs 6 instead of 4. And that's all you need. All you need is those 2 turns to beat the opponent to death with the creatures that you've already cast. I love this card. I expected to see a lot of play in party shells. I expected to see a lot of play in ephemerate decks, aggressively slanted decks. Nice one from Joe in chat, actually noting that this card actually does trigger Righteous Valkyrie as well, which is just a free upside, basically. It being a Cleric is very real. There are Cleric payoffs in Standard that could make this card even better. Love this design for PV. Think the card's going to see a lot of play in many, many formats. Highly recommend crafting some and trying it out. I like it a lot. Card is sweet. Sweet AF. Yeah, like swapping out Skyclave Apparition for Spellbinders in the control matchup seems good to me. We got Leona Lightscribe coming up here. Now, this is an interesting card. I'm not entirely sure it's like stupid powerful or anything, but it's the kind of card that you're happy that exists in these like black-white Magecraft payoff decks. We were obviously looking at the 1-drop a little bit earlier that cares about casting instants or sorceries to make itself bigger. Leona Lightscribe here, 2 mana 2/2 bear, can only ever be so bad. Bears are like a reasonable rate at the very worst. But if you cast an instant or sorcery or copy an instant or sorcery, creatures you control get +1/+1. Now, that's arguably better in shells that play things like Clarion Spirit and the Toski Feldar Retreat decks that are already going really wide, making loads of tokens. You can just cast a adventure, the backside of Lovestruck Beast or the backside of Bonecrusher Giant. That's my Howling impression. I hope you liked it. Titan Smash, what would I do without you? Honestly, how would I survive? This is really good with tokens. Really powerful with tokens, honestly. And quite good with the adventures that already exist. Yeah, I like this one. I like it. In the immortal words of Titan Smash MTG, this card is the bomb diggity. I can't take credit for that one, I'm afraid. Yeah, I like it. I actually think this is a pretty well printed effect that's happened a lot. We did do the 1 CMC Magecraft card already, yeah. We've seen similar stuff like Anthem effects like this all the time. It's just a copy of that has the set's keyword on it. And I expected to see play in decks that churn out tokens with Clarion Spirit or benefit from Tusky. I think it's quite good in those shells. It'll probably just go into the black-white Magecraft decks too. Again, this card is a Cleric. I think it's very easy to just not pay attention to the number of Clerics that are randomly in this set for both party reasons and just Cleric payoff reasons. So it's kind of good there too. Kind of good there too. Jeskai Prowess, maybe. You get like Sprite Dragon and stuff, right? Alright, Mavinda. Student's Advocate. Now, take a second to read this card again because it's confusing as fuck. It's templated very deliberately. And now, I'm going to share a secret with you, chat. Okay? And this, take this at face value. I could be wrong, but this is something that I firmly believe, okay? When you see a card that's templated like this, where it's ergonomically difficult to understand because it's had to be worded in a very unintuitive way, to me that means that Wizards had to test this card extensively to make sure it wasn't broken as hell. Now that goes one of two ways. Either the card is still very, very good because they had to slowly dial it back just a little bit, or they've nerfed it into the floor and it's completely garbage. And I do unfortunately fear this one might be slightly overworked. Ever so slightly, unfortunately. So 2 mana, 2/3 flyer. For 0 mana, you can cast an instant or sorcery from your graveyard. If it doesn't target a creature you control, it costs 8 more. So it casts 8 colorless instead of casting 0. It doesn't go back to the graveyard, you exile it instead. If there is a home for this card, it is going to be Historic Feather. It does a very good feather impression. This is like copies 5 to 8. You get to pick up those Fighter's Wands and Defiant Strikes and stuff like that and just reuse them for free. Because they're going to target your creatures. But I like the flexibility this offers because you can still reuse your removal spells later on at the cost of 8 mana a time. Now that's not cheap, it's not going to come up very often, but it does give you flexibility in terms of what you're capable of doing with the spells in your graveyard, which I think is kind of cool. I think Joe's being a bit too harsh on this one. I do think it is slightly overworked and has been dialed back a bit too much. But it's a very powerful effect. I know I keep saying that a ton today, but the effects that are being printed on these cards are very carefully worked, powerful effects. And I think this is going to see some play alongside Feather in the red-white, like Tempo, Shell. Definitely be explored in it at least. And the question will largely be, has it been nerfed a bit too much? And there is unfortunately only one way to find that out with a card like this, and that is to smack some games with it and see how it feels. And that's all we can really do with this one. It's a very cool effect, though. For sure. We've got some more limited filler here. Pilgrim of the Ages, so on and so forth. I'm going to look at Professor of Symbiology real quick. I know this card is very unassuming. Symbology? There we go. I fucked that up. Symbiology. It seems kind of weird to be taking a second to cover an uncommon in a situation like this, but Professor has my interest for a few reasons. Now, again, it's a Cleric. I know I keep saying this, but there are Cleric payoffs and party payoffs in Standard and in Historic. So Cleric is a relevant creature type. This is also just the white Elvish Visionary, right? And we've had formats where Elvish Visionary has been a playable, serviceable card. But as a 2-mana 2/1, so it's actually slightly better statted than Visionary. If you're giving up sideboard slots, this card reads 2-mana 2/1, draw whatever you need right now. It's 2-mana 2/1, draw a removal spell. 2-mana 2/1, draw a threat. 2-mana 2/1, draw a counterspell. Depending on what it is that you assign to your sideboard to learn. And that's a lot better than Elvish Visionary. This is the kind of uncommon that's going to be very good if you can leverage learn in a way that will let you have versatile answers to go and get. This is also obviously one of the learn payoffs that plays better with Urian Sky Nomad and Ephemerate and stuff too, because you can reuse it and draw additional cards that way by learning cards from your sideboard. Joe also talking about some weird ones here with Pyre of Heroes, it being a Cleric, letting you pyre it into either Skyflame Apparition or Righteous Valkyrie, which are obviously two very powerful white creatures. Obviously not a format-defining staple or anything, but this is probably just better than it looks on the surface. And if you can make Learn good in your deck, this is probably one of the cards that's a pretty serviceable payoff for playing it. So definitely worth knowing that it exists. We got an interesting one here for the lessons that we're talking about before in Reduced to Memory. 3-mana, exile target non-land permanent, its controller gets a 3/2. And now this is the kind of lesson that I was talking about before that you actually want access to in your sideboard, right? Because this card is not good. It's never going to be good. 3-mana, give your opponent a 3/2 is not where you want to be. However, if you've built a deck to utilize the mechanic and your opponent goes, oh, here's my Ugin the Spirit Dragon, Big Bomb, what are you going to do? My Coma, Cosmos Serpent. If you're a Learn deck, you now have a tutorable answer to those permanents because this card exists in your sideboard. So if you're a white Learn deck, it really wouldn't surprise me if this is exactly the kind of lesson that you want because it fits that removal slot we keep talking about. Exactly, you'd much rather me have a 3/2 over Coma, right? We're looking to have access to threat, removal, counterspell, subsection of cards from this Learn mechanic. And this is one of those. It is a answer to whatever the problem may be. So I would expect if Learn is constructed playable, then if you're white, this is one that you want. I would be very surprised if it wasn't. Alrighty. Secret Rendezvous. I know some people are hyped for this. How do I put this in the politest possible way? Don't let your opponent draw 3 cards. That's not a good idea. Semester's End. Is EDH playable? That's fair. I will admit that it might be EDH playable. Semester's End. Just play Narset. Yes, I guess, but if I'm Playing Narset, why would I not just cast Memory? Semester's End. Now this one is so hard to evaluate. I want to put this ahead of time to say that this is never going to see play in Historic, obviously. Because the truth is, you have Ephemerate. Why on God's green earth would you play this? The answer is you wouldn't. However, this does exile Planeswalkers. It does exile all your creatures, and it brings them back with bonuses. It's also instant speed. Unfortunately, we've already had like Flicker of Fate and similar effects be legal in Standard for quite some time, seeing basically no play. I think, unfortunately, this card's just a bit overcosted, is the sad truth. It does a lot of cool things, for sure. It's a very, very fun effect to resolve and just like blink your board out and bring it all back and laugh as your opponent dives to all your enter the battlefield triggers. But 4 mana is not easy to hold up. We've seen this with Collected Company, we've seen it with Settle the Wreckage, all these other cards that see Historic play. You know when your opponent has them because they have 5 cards in their hand and they have to smile at you and pass the turn and hope that you somehow don't know the card exists. Yeah, exactly. If this is going to find a home, it's in blue-white Blink, but I don't know how many Blink effects you really want. You already have, like, Charming Prince, Urian, Thassa. Like, is this better than Thassa? Probably not. Is it better than Charming Prince? Maybe, some amount of the time. Depending on how many other 2-drops you're playing. It's definitely not better than Urian. It's not even close to better than Urian. It's cool. It's a very cool card. It's very targeted effect. Yeah, maybe it's a 2-off, maybe. And we know where this card is going to be good. So if it's going to be good, it's going to be found very quickly. We'll find out real fast that that this card is good in those shells. But we can all pretty much agree that it's not going to be very good anywhere else. It's just too expensive outside of those dedicated flicker strategies in Standard. A lot of fun things you can do with it though, so no doubt I'll be casting my fair share. Alrighty. Sparring Regimen. I don't actually know what this card does, so let's take a look at it together, shall we? 3 mana enchantment. When it enters the battlefield, draw whatever card from your sideboard you want. When you attack, put a +1/+1 counter onto target attacking creature and untap it. I don't think this is very good, right? So 3 mana draw whatever it is you're looking for, which is normally the build around with Learn. 3 mana enchantments just aren't good in decks that want to attack for the most part. I'm not seeing this. This is just like the same problem that Rhythm of the Wild had, right? Where it's just 3 mana blank in aggro, as Hugh says in chat right now. Yeah, not a fan of this one. This one is pretty dire. You think this set is dog shit? I'm hoping you're wrong. I really am hoping you're wrong. A little bit more draft filler tucked away down here. Unfortunately, nothing too exciting apart from this. This I'm excited for. Strict Proctor has my attention. Good evening, AG Magic. How are you, my friend? 1/3 flyer. Whenever a permanent enters the battlefield, causing a triggered ability to trigger, counter it, unless its controller pays to. Now, your Urian now looks a lot worse. But that's not the best part of this card. The best part of this card is turning off your own bad triggers. This reminds me of Leona Lightscribe and similar bits and pieces where you can play a Croxer. And I guess I just won't pay 2 because I would rather have my Croxer in play. I'll play my Lotus Field. Oh, you want me to sacrifice 2 lands? Oh, I guess I won't pay 2 mana so that I don't have to do that. There's a lot of cool things that you can do with this card with negative triggers for yourself while also incidentally turning off your opponent's Angel deck, like by itself. Or turning off other, proactive triggers from your opponent the same way that Leona Lightscribe and Hushbringer do. This card's good, but it's probably only good if you're doing something busted with it yourself. Like, you're playing this card because you're trying to cheat on a trigger, like Croxer, like Lotus Field, and also because the format is full of ETBs right now. If both of those things are true, this card's going to be an all-star, and I recommend trying some out. We're doing good, AG. How are you, my friend? Hoping everything's doing okay. We're just doing our set review for Strixhaven. Thank you for stopping by. Alrighty, looks like we're mainly through white there. Nothing else stands out particularly to me in any meaningful way.